Hey, I'm going to welcome everybody to tonight's Condo Alliance. I'm Rebecca Sherry, I'm our president, and you likely passed David, my husband, on your way in, and everybody probably knows we live at Surf Dweller. The Condo Alliance of Okaloosa Island is a Florida nonprofit organization. We host community building and educational events from September through April, and we're known for leading volunteer dune planting, candidate forums, and as a group where some Okaloosa Island condo owners and guests work to improve our community. Our meetings are free and last 1 hour, which is why we're starting promptly on time. And I'll tell you right now for an introduction, Fort Walton Beach Council member Trey Goodwin is a friend to Okaloosa Island. At the August 13th, 2013 Fort Walton Beach City Council meeting, Mr. Goodwin made the motion, seconded by Dr. Joyce Gossam, to support responsible East Pass inlet management and to encourage a sand tracer study. And that resolution passed 5-2. Mr. Goodwin and his family joined with nearly 40 Condo Alliance of Okaloosa Island members and guests, with Nancy Husong of Okaloosa County TDC, in cleaning up Okaloosa Island on Saturday, October 19th, at the Second Chance Beach Cleanup. Mr. Goodwin is a candidate for County Commission District 4, and all Okaloosa County registered voters are eligible to vote for all County Commission candidates. And Mr. Goodwin, the floor is yours until 6:20 on the watch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Rebecca, I really do appreciate the introduction. And as Rebecca pointed out, I am on the Fort Walton Beach City Council, and I did support a resolution that I thought was important because it reflected an interest in the quality of our beaches, and I know that that's something that's a big deal to all of you here. But it's not just a big deal to all of you, it's a big deal to really everybody in Okaloosa County, whether they realize it or not, because they all derive a benefit from how good our waterways are, how good our beaches are. And so that resolution did promote using good science, using good, good common sense. Whether or not, what the ultimate outcome of that will be, we'll see. But certainly I am an advocate for our waterways and beaches. I grew up in Fort Walton Beach and have lived my life either fishing in the Gulf or fishing in the bayous or going to the beach and enjoying the great assets that we have. I want to take the opportunity tonight to talk to you about an issue that is more of a county issue than a city issue. I am running for County Commission District 4, and an issue that I think is all probably near and dear to each of you related to the TDC and the tourist development tax. I know that some of you were here. I was here when Ben Anderson addressed this group not too long ago, and he talked about the enforcement and the collection issues with the tourist development tax. And so I won't replow that ground. But what I really wanted to do was kind of give you a sort of a basic primer on what it is, where it comes from, why does it exist, and what's it supposed to do, and what can you do about it if you don't like the way it's working. And the reason I thought that would be important is I've been getting a lot of questions as I'm out and about talking to folks and meeting people, and I have people ask me, well, how do we have a tourist development tax? Was it created by statute? Did the legislature create it, and are they the ones that have to get rid of it? Who does it? Well, in doing the research on it, I found out, several interesting things. And one of which is it's certainly a creature of statute. County can't tax anything if the legislature doesn't say it can. Back in the 1970s, as far as I can tell from the statutory history, that legislature created the first framework of the tourist development tax with the idea being promote tourism in Florida. Certainly a reasonable goal and something that's important to us. The tourist development tax came to Okaloosa County in the mid-1980s. The way that happens is a referendum must be called, and the citizens in the county had to buy into it. It's real simple. It's not all the nuts and bolts. It's basically two simple questions on a referendum. Are you for or are you against a tourist development tax? And so the voters in Okaloosa County in the 1980s said we're for it, and then the county commission undertook to implement an ordinance to start the tourist development tax in our county. The way the statute works, there's really three components that come along with the tourist development tax. And I want to point those out because it seems like if we get back to the basics, we can understand what this thing is supposed to be doing and whether it's doing what it should be. First, there has to be a special taxing district. And Okaloosa County did create that. And I've got a map with me. It's available on the website, but after the meeting, if you want to take a look at it, you certainly can. And it essentially encompasses Destin, most of Fort Walton, some unincorporated Okaloosa County in the greater Fort Walton Beach area, Mary Esther, of course the Okaloosa Island, but for most of the Air Force land. And, you know, generally it appears to be, the boundaries are legal and appropriately identified and seem to make some logical sense, although some of the neighborhoods you would see included, you'd kind of question whether or not it was a little arbitrary for them to be included, but it is what it is, and that is the special taxing district. The second component that the legislature said has to be created if you're going to do a tourist tax is a plan, and the county has a plan. It's been amended a couple times over the years. The plan basically tracks the statute. The statute says you can spend, this first couple cents for these certain things, and then if you do that for a few years, then you've got the right to come back and add a few more cents, and you can spend them for this, and it goes all the way through up to 5 cents on the dollar. Well, we have a plan, and we're maxed out in Okaloosa County at 5 cents on the dollar. The third component of that the legislature said you've got to have is a Tourist Development Council. Now, I know none of you in here have ever heard of a Tourist Development Council, I'm sure. But apparently we have one in Okaloosa County, and it spends some money sometimes. The Tourist Development Council, being the third leg of this framework, is really important. And it's got three main functions. When you go to the statute and you read it, it's real easy. And I kind of boiled it down to three things that are easy to remember. It's the three R's. It's supposed to recommend, it's supposed to review, and it's supposed to report. I'll break those three down. The recommend to the Board of County Commissioners ways to spend those tax dollars to promote the purposes of the tourist development plan. I mean, that seems fairly straightforward. It's not to write checks. It's not to make decisions. It's to make recommendations to the board, not to a tourist development director, to the board. The board spends the money under the statute. The review, that's very significant. The review is a continuous duty on the members of the council. And before I go into that, there are 9 members of the council, and the makeup is you've got 2 that must be municipal elected officials, 1 from the most populous city in the special taxing district. Okaloosa County, that's Fort Walton Beach. You've got to have 6 that are from the tourist industry that pay taxes in the special taxing district, and then 1 that's essentially at large but must be a registered voter in Okaloosa County. The way our board's made up, we've got a Fort Walton Beach council person, a Destin council person, 6 industry people, and 1 Board of County Commissioner. And that makes up your 9. And that's your TDC. So back to the review. The legislature said the TDC must continuously review expenditures of these tax dollars, these tourist tax dollars. Not annually, not when it seems like a good idea. A continuous obligation. And I think that's important because, because of some of the issues we've had in our county, and we all know what those are, I think, with expenditures and really breaching public trust, that there was a lot of concern about, well, who has authority? When you really dig down into it, it's not about authority, it's who has responsibility. And there's some responsibility on the council, some responsibility, a majority of the responsibility on the Board of County Commissioners. The review process also requires that the TDC be given quarterly, at minimum quarterly, expenditure reports to review. And then the last component, which is critical, is the reporting. And there's a dual reporting obligation on the TDC. And again, it's not report to the executive director, report to the county manager. It's report to 2 places. The Board of County Commissioners directly, and report to the Department of Revenue. So I can only infer that at some point when the legislature created this statute, they thought there might be a county that might have a little bit of a problem, kind of like Okaloosa County, so they created this dual reporting. And what's supposed to be reported is anything that is a questionable expenditure, not the board has voted and decided something is an improper expenditure. Err on the side of caution. Report questionable expenditures and know what those are because you're continuously reviewing. That's what the legislature assumes the TDC councils are doing in the counties that have adopted. In concept, I mean, the framework makes sense, right? I mean, you've got industry people, stakeholders, you've got elected officials at the county level, they're in communication, everybody's taking responsibility, understands what their responsibilities are. In a perfect world, that's the concept. You know, I mean, could you imagine a county in which, you know, you've got 9 members and they've all been sat down and understand that we're not just advisory members, we've got a fiduciary duty to the public. And maybe some of them wouldn't want that job. That's fine. Better to find that out now and let someone step in that's willing to take that burden on. And remember, these folks aren't paid. These are volunteer positions, so it takes a lot of time and it's a lot to take on as a service back to your community. But when you sign up and accept the job, you got to do it. Otherwise, you have problems like we've had. Under the plan, the second component under the statute, you know, where do the 5 cents go? Essentially, the 5 cents on every dollar. The first cent in Okaloosa County goes to beaches and shorelines. Broad category. The second cent goes to beaches and waterway facilities. Probably some crossover there, but that's how it's broken up on those first 2 pennies. The third penny goes to the Emerald Coast Conference Center operations and other facility operations. I suspect it's largely absorbed in the conference center. So the conference center is, you know, as we all probably know, is a subsidized entity. In other words, it doesn't break even. It takes tax money to keep it afloat. The fourth cent goes to debt service. Well, now we know that the debt on the conference center has been paid off. But that doesn't mean that 4th cent goes away. The county is able to take that and push that back into operational purposes. And it looks to me like going through the budget, that's what it's doing. And then the 5th cent is tourist development. So that's the breakdown of where the 5 pennies go. You know, and in light of the fact that we have paid off that major debt, you know, I tend to be of the mindset that, you know, should we look into lowering our rate? Should we be more competitive and only be 4 cents on the dollar? Do we need all 5? Do we need that $12 million? That's the current budget numbers that I've got when you go to the county website. $12 million broken up into 5 pots, and that's how it's broken up and spent. And in those pots are expenditures for travel and all these sorts of things that go along with you know, sending, you know, folks to go and try to promote different things. And of course, you know, everyone can second guess whether or not some of these are appropriate or some are not. But in the general broad categories, they meet what the statute says you can do with the money. The other component or the other issue that I've really been asked about that I wanted to talk to you about is, you know, people have asked me, you know, if we don't like the way the TDC is set up, if we don't like the way the tourist tax is set up, what can be done about it? Can we change it? Who can change it? Well, the answer is, if you're going to make a material change to the plan, which would change what you're doing with the money or how much money you're taxing, that's going to be the Board of County Commissioners with a majority plus 1 vote. So it would take you 4 members to get that done. And, you know, they can't take away anything that's pledged as collateral on a debt. So once you've pledged something to a third party who's relying on it, like with the bond issue on the conference center, you know, that money is that tax has to stay in place until that debt's retired. The other question I've had is, well, what if the citizens don't want it? We approved it in the first place. What if we don't like it anymore, or we want a substantial change? Well, yeah, it can be gotten rid of, and only through a referendum. And a referendum's only called if 15% of the electorate, out of two different categories, two potential categories, 15% of the electorate of the county as a whole petition the county commission for a referendum. The county commission has to have a referendum, or 15% of the electorate in the special taxing district, a much smaller number. If either one of those two numbers are met, thresholds are met, and a petition submitted to the county commission, they have to call a referendum, and then you get the same question again, essentially, do you want a tourist tax or do you not? And then, of course, even under that circumstance, if there is pledged collateral, you can't get rid of it until the debt's retired, which makes sense because third parties have relied on it. But I thought it was important to talk about those fundamentals because I've got concerns that the fundamentals aren't being implemented. Now, we've had some changes in our county. I've gone through and I've read the policy manual and bylaws for the Tourist Development Council. And I've read the Auditor General's report that came out in January, and I'm sure several of you have as well. Interesting to me that when you look at the policy manual, it does incorporate two of the R's of that I've coined R's of the Tourist Development Council, the recommend, and that language is lifted straight out of the statute, and the review. That language is also lifted out of the statute and put in the manual so that it's clear in black and white. You're supposed to review and recommend. I couldn't find the report, which to me, the review means nothing if you don't report it to anyone. And so I think we've still got some progress to make in Okaloosa County on our oversight. I know we've cranked down on some of the expenditures, but I'm not sure that everybody understands their roles. We've just hired a new executive director for the Tourist Development Council, and I certainly hope that he's going to be a breath of fresh air for us here, and that that he's going to do some good things for our county. Not required to have a director. The statute doesn't say you have to. You can hire people to implement the tax. And so that's what we've done in Okaloosa County. But I think that part of the problem that we had historically, and I'm not convinced we fixed it, is that the chain of command and chain of reporting, and it's less about chain of command, it's more about chain of reporting and chain of oversight between the county manager, the tourist development director, and the council and the Board of County Commissioners. There's too much of a removal between the advisory council and the Board of County Commissioners. It's too easy to point fingers at somebody else still. It's too easy to pass the buck and not take on that responsibility directly. To me, it would be great if we had a Board of County Commission that would sit down in front of these 9 people and say, look, we're appointing you and this is what we expect. Not what does the county attorney tell you you need to do, not what does the TDC director tell you 9 members you need to do, not what the county administrator tells you need to do. The Board of County Commissioners are the governing body. The statute puts it squarely on their shoulders. If they sit down and they make clear, this is the allocation of responsibility. This is what's expected. These are the duties, the fiduciary duties you owe the people of Okaloosa County. We've got good people here. I think they take that seriously. I don't think that's been done. Not in that way. Not in a way, from what I can tell, to make sure that we have the checks in place that were designed to keep this from being abused, which we all know it has been. And of course now in a reactionary way, which reaction was necessary, we've squeezed down and sort of put the brakes on stuff, but not really fixed the problem. And I met with several of the tourist, the TDC council members, and and they said that doing things with these tax dollars has been significantly choked down, is bogged down in more process, which is okay if the process is necessary. But if you get back to the fundamentals of the distribution of responsibility, I think you fix a lot of those problems. I think that's the root of the issue. And so I wanted to share that with y'all because unfortunately, as I've learned in my experience in local government, that you can't always trust your local government to do what it needs to do for you. You need to be an informed electorate and an informed citizenry, and you need to understand how these things work. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to share that with you. I want to save a little time as well in case anybody has questions. I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
Yeah, has the subject of a tax holiday come up for the off season?
I have not seen the subject of a tax holiday addressed. I'm not sure if it's legal.
Well, yeah, as it stands now, as the law stands now.
Right.
But as far as generating additional revenues through the sales tax or whatever, if you, particularly in the off season, where you're not going to collect much tax anyway, if you had a tax holiday, then prices would come down and people would be more attracted to the area.
You know, and a tax holiday makes a lot of sense because, like I said, frankly, I'm concerned we're overtaxing already. And are there ways we can peel it back where we don't need it now? I think to implement that, it would take an act of the legislature.
The county legislature?
The state.
Oh.
That's my opinion, of course, just based on my review. I could be wrong. I've been told I was wrong before, although I didn't believe them. But just kidding about that. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know if you can address why the state puts lots of restrictions on how we can spend TDC tax money. For example, it seems like a no-brainer that if we collect these taxes, we should be able to fund our lifeguards, which we actually did, but as I understand it, we weren't supposed to. Why are they restrict the TDC funds to just marketing when it could be used for lifeguards, it could be used for the infrastructure that we need to support that big influx in the summer? I don't understand.
The best answer I have for you is nobody understands the legislature, but the way that I understand it, the purpose and the policy behind the legislation that originally authorized the tax was that they wanted to make sure they didn't use it in any way for core government functions. So the legislature carved out categories of how money could be spent. And it's not just categories that any of the 5 cents can be spent. You know, I mean, there's restrictions on, the first two on this, but you can add another one for this and another one for this, which would include some debt service on facilities. So they broke it out like that. And my understanding is the legislature didn't want counties spending the money on things that were generally considered just general government function. Now, the legislature could change that. It's in their purview to do it. But the counties can't change it because, again, the counties can only tax and use the tax money the way the legislature tells them they can. So that's really the best answer I have on that. But I think it's a good point, and it does beg the question, when you bring more tourists in and you put more demands on what would traditionally be normal government functions, would it make sense to be able to use some of that money that brought them here to supplement the money that we're spending on those core government functions? Because right now, you know who's footing that bill? Property owners. So I think it's an excellent question and an excellent point. Yes, sir.
On with the TDC executive director, and I, like you, I hope the new executive director turns out, but it points out something that isn't just applicable to the TDC. When we hired the last 2 TDC directors, the last guy lasted a year and didn't work out. The guy before that committed suicide when they were about to put him under arrest, so that one obviously didn't turn out. And it seemed like when we went out to do a search the 3rd time, that we had the same people fishing in the same pond, doing the same processes, and I didn't see any effort to do any kind of a post-mortem on the process and say, hey, this just failed 2 times in a row. What are we doing wrong, before we went out a 3rd time? And that could be applicable to any government hire or within Okaloosa County. Do you think there might be a need for something like that? And how could something like that be done in Okaloosa County? In the private sector, that would have been done a long time ago.
Well, I think that's a good question, and I share your concerns about, are we doing things the exact same way we did before? And if we are, why are we assuming we're going to get a different result? And you're exactly right. Private industry tends to figure that out a little quicker than government. But yes, I do think that there would be an opportunity to sit back and reevaluate what are you looking for? What are the job requirements? And then how are you searching for individuals to fill those? What do you want your TDC director to do? You know, and of course there's some, there's this, category of line item bullet points of what a TDC director should do in Okaloosa County, and it's I mean, it's an administrative bureaucratic function, but yes, I don't see why, if it fails 1, 2, or 3 times, you wouldn't step back and say, well, let's look at our criteria, and then let's look at our vetting committees. Let's look at how we're searching. Let's look at the scope of our search. I mean, I think all those things make sense and should be done. Like you, I'm not convinced they were done. Although I remain optimistic that even if the search were faulty, that maybe the result is good, and I remain hopeful there. So I hope I answered your question. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
How large is the operating deficit for the conference center over there?
The operating deficit?
How much do they lose here?
Well, I want to say that they're being subsidized to the tune of $2.4 million. I think somewhere in there, because each of the pots of money represents about 3.5% of the $12 million, because there's 5 pots. So it's getting 3.5% of the $12 million for this budget year. So that should put it around 2.1, 2.2 million, based on my math, and I'm no math major, but significant. Makes it hard for private places to compete. I've heard that, because again, it's getting subsidized.
Anybody ever thought about doing a promotional campaign so we're getting more paying customers, so they will have less contributions from taxpayers to support that?
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's a question that I've had for a while myself. Why are, we contract out the food, and then we find out that the food vendors use county trucks, but why are we trying to do via government employees what the private industry does much better? Why aren't we looking at whether or not it makes sense to contract out operation? I mean, to me, why not put it out to a competitive market, a competitive bid, to do those things that you're talking about, to more competitively market the facility, to try to get more people use it? I mean, we've got it. Might as well not sit there with an empty building.
This is a great facility and a great location. When I worked for AT&T when the trade shows, there was always people at trade shows, even some telecom equipment, in the corners promoting sites, meetings, future meetings. And that's how they generate business.
Well, it makes sense, and that's part of what is supposed to come out of that 5th cent, tourist promotion. And, I would say that my best answer to you is that I don't think we found the right people doing the right things to get it done. I'm not sure that more money thrown at it is the answer, but more efficiency and more expertise. And in saying that, I'm not criticizing our TDC members, because there's some smart people there. Believe me, I've met and talked with a lot of them, and there's some well-seasoned folks in the industry that understand our area and understand the industry. But at the end of the day, they're not the ones. They're not the ones where the rubber meets the road and actually getting these things done. They're not going to these conventions by and large, like you're explaining. But I think you're right. It's a very nice facility. It's built. It's paid for. Why is it underutilized? It doesn't make sense. Of course, there are other components to that: infrastructure, roadways, congestion. All those things play a factor into whether or not you're competitive with your facility. But I do agree with you that we're underutilizing. I hear that a lot. There's a real concern about underutilization. Yes, sir.
Yeah, is there a formal forum for Panhandle counties to talk to each other so that we don't wind up cannibalizing